Welcome back, Warriors, to another episode of Vigor Warriors 2. And once again, I'm driving home, and I always like to take advantage of as much time as I have to do things, and so I'm going to try to do another video here as we go back. And once again, as always, I always like to thank you guys for subscriptions, comments, likes. I got a lot of different types of comments and things. It's going to kind of add to more topics we're going to talk about. And one of the things I want to talk about with this one is three individuals who actually are important in what we're talking about. And those are Shakespeare, Tesla, and Isaac Newton. Now, why are they important? Before we do that, subscribe, like, and comment. But why are they important? Well, let's look at this. All three of them, and there's some famous quotes by Shakespeare talking about celibacy. All three of them are practicing the stuff that we're talking about. And whether you call it, brahmacharya, whether you call it retention, whether you call it sophism, anything like that, it's kind of the same type of thing. If you are refraining from, if you're refraining from images and pornography, if you're refraining from sexual activities, all these type of things, and you're really focusing on trying to be better with, within yourself, spiritual side of yourself, and you're trying to kind of go on this journey in which now you're getting away from all the materialistic view things and viewpoints, and now you're focusing on getting closer to your God and those type of things. Well, then you're practicing this type of thing we're talking about. And whether you want to call it retention, or whether you want to call it sophism or brahmacharya or any other type of thing you want to talk about, the idea that you're able to learn self-control and that you're moving to another level reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're moving past the basic bottom of the pyramid. You're talking about now self-actualization. You're now trying to move to a different level in which now you're looking at yourself outside of your body. You're trying to look at the spiritual aspect, and you're trying to go deeper into the meaning of life. And that's kind of what kind of motivated me to do all this. I mean, I'm always into trying to be the best version that I can be. And when I talk about trying to look at people who are role models, who people want to try to focus on things that are better off than you have, then you're focusing on things that people do. In this case, what they're doing is they're focusing on learning self-control. And as we talked about people like Shakespeare, and we're talking about people like Tesla, and we're talking about Isaac Newton, they were all in periods of time where they didn't have all the technology, all the things that we have now. And so there wasn't images like that, there wasn't things, but then they also still had their mind. And I believe that in any era in the history of mankind, you had what I call these lascivious behaviors. All you got to do is look at the Roman Empire to know that in part the reason why it collapsed is because it became weak. And then people from the outside came in and were able to destroy it, whether it was Attila the Hun or the Huns or whoever it might be. But that didn't happen until the country became so weak, the empire became so weak because they were destroying each other. They had given in to all these kind of pleasures and lusts and all these type of things that made people weak. And I think that's the whole danger into not learning self-control. And if generations do this, and they do this, all of a sudden it becomes weaker and weaker. Now it's accepted as normal, and it's really not normal. And that's where we're at in this society now. All these type of behaviors that we're talking about that makes you lose your energy, your vital force, are becoming normalized. And it's something that is just really destructive. Oops, sorry about that. Speaking of destructive, we're into a bump there. Really destructive when it comes to actually making you the best person you can be. And so, when I look at this situation, you got to go back and look at role models and people who could say, I really did it the right way. Now, whether you like all of Shakespeare plays or all of Tesla's inventions or Newton's theories, of physics and laws of physics, things like that, the idea that these individuals were able to come up with so many things that helped create, different things in our society, just shows the fact that these people had abundance amount of energy. And the reason they had that energy was because they weren't focused on, pictures and releasing energy all the time. They weren't focused on chasing, girls or guys around, in this case, girls around. And they weren't interested in doing that. Shakespeare, I believe, was celibate his whole life. And so he was able to focus his mind and looked at life in a completely different way. Nowadays, we accept all this as being normal, which is why I think we have a lot of problems in our society. Not only the moral issues, I think, are out there. Obviously, doing this stuff, as we've talked about before, creates a lot of problems physically. And when you look at the physical nature of people, I believe that, when you're releasing all the time, it's no wonder people get sick. And they end up getting issues with their back, with their legs and their arms. And why not? When you're losing all your nutrients, why wouldn't you be sick? I mean, it makes perfect sense if you think about it. And then from a mental standpoint, I think that the brain, if you're focusing on images and different things like this and bad toys, which we'll do another video on, those type of things are going to create, your mind's going to become like mush. And you're always going to be thinking about these things. You're not going to focus on goals and achieving things that you want to achieve. Now, obviously, transmuting is a key type of thing. But these people did it all the time. They didn't have time to fool around with, chasing girls and guys and things like this. They didn't have time to do that. They basically had a mission to try to come up with as many innovations as they could, as many explanations, scientific type laws that they could, plays in Shakespeare's case, trying to come up ways to create literature, these type of things, in days where we did not have that kind of technology. And they did that because they had abundance of energy. They could do things all the time and keep on working all night long and maybe sleep a few hours here and there and keep working. So is it no wonder that we still talk about these people in Shakespeare's case and Newton's case especially so many years and centuries later? No, because they were people who stood for something. And that's the thing that we've got to get back to our society. We have got to get back to people, whether you like some of the works or not. That's not really, in my mind, the issue. The issue in my mind is these people stood for something, they did something, they worked hard, and they basically had huge amounts of self-control. They were able to control the situations around them and make life better for people because they were able to control themselves. And because they were able to control themselves, then they controlled everything else around. And you do that by a lifestyle. And obviously all three of them, especially the celibacy part, it was a lifestyle. They knew that unless they had a wife and they were going to have kids, that there was no reason to go ahead and lose all that vital force that you had. And I think that's something for us to take as a model to kind of say, all right, maybe I've gone ways and not done that, but I can start anytime I want to. So I'm challenging you guys as well to focus on looking at how can we start today, this hour, to start my journey. And so as I'm looking at this, I'm going to kind of call upon people to start their journeys. People listening to this. You can start anytime you want to. I mean, I started at 58 years old, and I'm just getting tremendous benefits. I can just imagine if I was able to control this and do this when I was 20, 30 years old, who knows what I may have accomplished back then. But the point being is I had to go through all those things, and maybe just like when people have trouble with the drinking problem and they go back and they start teaching people about, how to stop drinking, and they join Alcohol Anonymous, and they help people, you have to sometimes do that. Same thing with drugs. And maybe the purpose I have now, after going through all these heartaches and problems and trying to learn how to control myself, maybe this is the reason I'm doing this now. You know, it's very possible that I'm kind of sharing with you guys all the things that happened to me because of all the things that I had problems with. You know, and maybe that's something that is my destiny for this type of thing. So as I do this, I think it's important to kind of recognize that as we look at people in our society who have accomplished things, they have accomplished a lot, not only from a physical standpoint, but mentally, because they were able to learn, use their self-control and be able to go ahead and say, look it, you know, I'm going to focus on trying to do the best that I can. And part of it being the best I can is learn how to go within myself and not only look at the material things, but now move past material things into more of moving towards my God, moving towards the spiritual aspect of things. And so this one's a little more on the spiritual side, because as you practice these things we're talking about, your lifestyle is saying, okay, there's more to life than the physical stuff, more than the physical things you have, more than the physical things you do. Yes, we need money. Yes, we need these type of things. You need to make money. You need to go ahead and keep doing things and succeeding, but you're also doing it for an overall purpose. And as you get older, as you get to the point where you realize that there is a whole different world than what you're seeing. What each one of us sees is not the world that is out there. There's another world to me that's the spiritual world. And I think once you see people who die and pass away, you see that person was no more than just, the person's no longer there. And when my father passed away, I saw that. They're no longer there. There's something that came out of that body. And once again, if you look at the law of physics, matter cannot be destroyed. It just transfers into something else. And so if you realize that, you realize there's a whole nother world. And the Bible talks about this, a lot of things talk about this as the principalities beyond the faces of people. And so if you see that, you realize that how important that this celibacy, this retention, these things are, because they will get you closer to that spiritual realm you want to go to. And I think all of us want to have some of that in our life, because we realize that, you know, we're kind of empty with just the physical and the mental. If we don't really know, you know, how to make ourselves happy within, a lot of that comes from our own type of spiritual being that we have. And the soul is the key part of that. All right, so once again, the idea is that looking at role models, as we're focusing on, Newton, Shakespeare, and Tesla all created great things because they were able to learn how to control themselves, and then they did things that were able to control things outside of them. All right, so until next time, my friends, battle on.